Can you repeat what you just said, Mike? Just because now we're recording, because that was a great line.
Stuff like that goes through my head all the time. That's why I write songs. I just said you should hit record right now and we can just start rolling on drugs. No pun intended.
Hi, this is Dennis Dempsey. You are listening to the Faith in Humanity podcast. Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of the Faith in Humanity podcast. On this episode, Mike and I are discussing drugs. This is a topic that we both feel pretty strongly about. We have opinions and passions in one direction, and you'll hear that on the podcast, but it's definitely a fascinating topic, and our discussions, I find the discussion really great. I always find our discussions really great, but I hope that you guys enjoy, because we discuss kind of how if it's possible to incorporate drugs into a spiritual practice, and whether drugs can be even used as a spiritual practice in general, and whether they should be incorporated or if they should be used as a spiritual practice on their own. So it's a pretty interesting topic. It's a topic that I find incredibly fascinating, because these plants and the way they affect us have been present in nature for thousands, millions of years. So I just find it to be a topic that I think people feel strongly about, and I think that it's a topic that can bring on a lot of interesting opinions, interesting thoughts, and an interesting discussion. So I'm excited to be showing this and presenting this to you guys right now. But before we get into the episode, I just want to quickly tell you guys how you can find us on social media. You can find us on Facebook and on YouTube by searching the Faith in Humanity podcast. You can also follow us on Twitter at TFIH_podcast. And you can also email us at tfih.podcast@gmail.com. And lastly, if you have a minute of your time, if you could just go and give us a review on either Google, iTunes, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts, that would help other people find our podcast, and it would make us really happy. So if you could do that, that'd be incredible and awesome. And all right, without any further ado, please enjoy the show. So yeah, let's talk about drugs. Let's talk about drugs and how they affect spiritual practices. I don't know. Like let's kind of have a discussion as to whether we think that they are useful for a spiritual practice, or even, I don't know, maybe even essential. Maybe I wouldn't go as far as to say essential, but that's strong language, because I think that you can reach higher states of consciousness through meditation. Yeah. But I liked how who was it? Was it Graham Hancock? It may have been Graham, who was talking about how he was doing ayahuasca. He was talking about ayahuasca, and ayahuasca is this hallucinogenic vine, I believe. I think it's called the Vine of Gods down in, I think it's Peru, South America area, where they use it as a spiritual practice. You take this tea that's made, I think it's with ayahuasca and another plant. You have to combine those two.
There's a couple plants, and then the vine, and they mash it up, and they make the drink.
And then you go on this this journey. And it's supposed to be like incredibly enlightening. But he was kind of saying that that's like a rocket ship to the spiritual world, whereas I think you can do it through different practices.
And it utilizes the the DMT, that whole
and we're gonna definitely get into it. And that is that component is just. I mean,
I didn't mean to interject. If we'll get to that, then keep going on your train track of Graham Hancock.
No. But it's important, because DMT is like I think it's referred to as the spirit molecule,
Yeah,
right?
and
It's
it's
supposed to
not a
be.
synthetic drug either.
Yeah.
Our bodies make it as well, so that's the interesting part
Mm-hmm.
about that. Um,
Yeah, and I think it's like released when you die, apparently. But
yeah. Hmm.
yeah, let me get back to
Graham Hancock and the
yeah,
ayahuasca.
Graham Hancock. Yeah. So a lot of people, yeah. So Graham Hancock talks about how it's a rocket ship, right, to the spiritual realm, and some people would say that that's kind of a way like a way to cheat, where you should be doing it through meditation and just like spiritual disciplines, but which is something that we can go into, but I think that we should talk about right now just drugs and how they affect people's understanding of the after of not well the spiritual world out there, because I think they serve a really good purpose, and I think that
Yeah,
the way that here in America
but
have the way.
there's I mean, and I mean I always kind of play both sides of a coin. I agree with you that they
Mhm.
do definitely serve a purpose, but I also feel that there is a fine line between utilizing drugs in a beneficial, positive way and abusing them. I don't, I don't think there can be enough said about that as well. Depending on the
Oh,
drug
I
too,
can't
I guess. You know,
Mhm.
um,
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more with you. Absolutely, 100%. I think there's a way to abuse it. Even benign drugs like marijuana. Graham, again, he talks about how great marijuana can be used and how he thinks it can be used medicinally and it can be used spiritually. I mean, it's a plant that has been used for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and it's like probably one of the most benign substances in the world. I mean, you can't die from it.
right.
It's like it's not gonna like fry your brain out. It's so benign. But Graham talks about how he abused it. He said that he took even something as small as marijuana. He was like, I was just constantly high. It's almost like
Oh, I've
he almost.
definitely had periods in my life where I've abused marijuana, and it was just I was smoking it just excessively. I mean, to the point where, in retrospect, it definitely was abuse, without question, and it just deviated me. Now I'm a person of I think baseline I'm not a person of much ambition as it is, so that doesn't help at all with that. Being that I'm already just naturally just a laid back, just I don't know. That's just my general energy. It's always been that way. I don't know. It makes me think of we were looking through pictures a couple of years ago, and my mom just started cracking up. And there was a picture of it was like a group family shot. It was on my dad's side, and my mom was laughing, and I was like, we are just like, what's so funny? And she's like, Michael, like, you look like you have the weight of the world on your shoulders. And then, everybody's just like smiling, happy, and I mean, I was, but just my posture and everything, it's just how I am. So it's like, I definitely don't need help with, winding down, I kind of have that enough
Well,
as it is.
yeah, that may make you prone to overusing something like marijuana that kind of
Well,
mellows you
yeah,
out
because
and
it felt
everything.
like,
Just
oh,
starting to
this kind of is my speed. Where,
yeah.
I mean, really, I find, and again, to talk about the drugs and stuff, I think it's everybody's different. So there's going to be different uses. I mean, I personally feel like that any synthetic drug is just garbage. Anything that you're buying from a pharmacy or is just it should all just be thrown out and never touched again. Uh, but when it comes to the natural, you know, medicines, if you will, it for me it was I remember. I mean, my initial approach to weed was for kind of exploring the mind, the mindscape, if you will, just seeing where you could go mentally, where you might not be able to go, because you just haven't really learned how to go there. And Um, we could definitely talk about all the different drugs, but I mean, through all my experience with drugs and stuff, not that I'm like, there's some people out there who try everything and anything, and I was never that way. I always just wanted to use, the stuff that the psychedelics, if you will, that would kind of just enhance the mental experience, like the mental side of life, just to explore the mind and its outer reaches and where it could go. And for me, it was like, okay, drugs showed me that, but I also feel now that like the goal is to learn. I've learned about those places, and I think the goal is to learn ways in which you can attain those mental states without them. And that, again, that's just a personal thing, but I feel like that because it's like, okay, you've been shown, you know, like I said, I don't want to say the goal or the finish line, but you've been shown this stuff, and then I think the best way to reach it is actually through a sober mind. But it's it was like I wouldn't have known to go there if I wasn't shown it through the drugs, kind of. If that makes any sense. So that's how I approach it. My interest in them. I still have interest in them, but I find my interest in reaching certain states of mind while being completely and utterly sober is I find my interest in that growing and growing as I get older, for sure. Where it used to be like, oh, I would love to just be high all the time and occasionally maybe try tripping on something, but now it's more so I find my interest increasing in I'd like to reach these states of mind through while being sober, and just learning how to do that. And I think you could almost kind of have it all the time. That's kind of maybe the goal, is to just be on this elevated vibration, elevated frequency all the time. And again, well, yeah, that's just my experience and my outlook on it. But we could go back to whatever the beginning of just talking about Graham Hancock and everything.
Well, first of all, let me just finish the point that I was making before. Just kind of let me just like put that to bed. But then I do want to ask you a question about what you just said. So when I was talking about yes, drugs, I agree they can definitely be abused, and then they are used for the wrong purposes once they begin to get abused. And I think that you're right. I think that I think a lot of the drugs that are just like the ecstasy and all those like party drugs. I don't know. Those things I just think are garbage. And I also think the pharmaceutical ones are garbage as well. I mean, people, it's so ridiculous to me that people demonize people that like, especially people that smoke weed, which is like the stupidest thing in the world. Because weed is just, once again, incredibly benign, and it can be so useful. And it's obviously moving towards legalization, probably faster than expected, because I know in my county alone it got decriminalized like last month, so it's like you can only get a fine, like so it's like a non-issue even down in Georgia, but
Which, yeah, I was a little surprised by that.
yeah, I think people are pretty surprised, but yeah, if you have an ounce or less, it's just a $75 fine. So it's like equivalent to like getting a speeding ticket or something. But so yeah, it's just interesting to me that they'll demonize people. And I think this is like American culture. And I think this is the lens that American culture, which like American culture and Christian culture are kind of pretty close in many ways, in many parts of the country, especially in the Southeast, where they demonize people that take drugs, but then you can take all these other medications that are altering your mind in, I think worse in worse ways than just by smoking weed, but they take it to calm down and to relax or to sleep at night. And it's like, so what makes those drugs?
Right. You're doing the same thing to your
Yeah.
body. You're altering the chemical composition, and it's the same thing. You're altering the chemical composition, only when it comes to the pills, coming over a pharmacy counter, there are certain corporations making massive profits off of it, because they've cornered the market, and that's the tough thing about mankind progressing, is that at this point in history, we only really progress at the rate which people are okay with where the money's going. Even if we know something is good, if the right people I don't want to say the right people, that's terrible, but if certain people aren't making the money, you're not going to progress there until they know that, and they can ensure that they will be seeing their returns on this new direction we're going in. That's kind of, I feel like, the downside of the way our whole kind of world economy, or just economy, is set up. It's, you have these controlling people, and well, actually, and that's the interesting thing, is that ultimately the consumer makes the markets. So when it comes to, say, like weed getting legalized, it's bound to happen, because I feel like there's so many consumers of it who just know that the laws, it's all just BS, and it's, I mean, and that's not to take away a lot, yeah, and it's not to take away from, back in 19, I think it was, I was thinking about this morning. It was like I'm not positive of the year. I feel like it was circa 1928 or 1932, somewhere right around there, is where they technically made marijuana illegal, and they did it by basically saying, well, the only way you can produce, sell, or purchase is if you have these. I think it was like a stamp of a sort, something like that, but they never produced the stamps, so that's kind of how they did it. So it was, which made then any transaction illegal. It made any production illegal, and they just did it with writing words down on a piece of paper. That's, and it's crazy to think that, and then it's crazy to think that how many people follow that rule just because. I mean, because it was the law, if you will.
Mhm. Which, yeah, so yeah, and laws obviously aren't moral, but
Right, and that's just, yeah. So that's going back into the whole. At this point in time, people are shifting their finances around, and as long as the people who were making big bucks off of this stuff that marijuana is ultimately going to replace, that's when we're going to see like the chips start to fall, because it's all dictated by where the money is, and it's
oh yeah, if Pfizer could have a have the what is it, the patent on marijuana and could only sell it. I mean, it would be legal overnight. If they could make money, it would be legal overnight. But and the thing is, the point that I was trying to make is that demonizing these people, that people are taking these prescription medications that are messing them up even more. It also has a lot to do with the American culture. Because if you go to India or some other place in the world, marijuana is just accepted and it's fine and it's not a big deal and it's okay, and you don't have the issues that we face here. So it really it really has to do with the mindset that you have, or just where you're brought up and kind of the society that's molding the way that you think.
Oh, definitely, and a lot of what, like, not a lot of, but without I know without question, when it comes to like my quote unquote abuse of marijuana, it was partly due to me responding to, be it certain people's direct comments or just the societal outlook of like, you can't do this, and like part of me using it was like, yes, I can. Yes, I can, and I'm going to. And it was almost out of trying to, defy what I thought was such an obvious hypocrisy. Uh, And as I got older, I got past that because I was like, well, you're just being juvenile now. Um, Use it to the extent where it helps you, and then also know where it's too much, and and just be realistic about it. I mean, and that was a result of me being young. I was pretty much a kid at the time, so it was like I was just being young and defying like I said, what I thought was just very hypocritical. This because once I had tried it and used it, I just knew it was like there's nothing quote unquote wrong or bad about this. I mean, like I said, I mean everything in moderation because there is a point where it becomes very
Mhm.
counterproductive, and it's going to actually hold you back as opposed to
Yeah.
help you. It's gonna hinder you as opposed to help. Um, so it But again, if you like you said with the laws, it's ridiculous because no, laws are not moral at all. It's not completely, but to a large extent, laws are created because of money, and it's like, where's the money going to go, and who's going to have their pocket open, and who's going to be putting what in whose pocket, and how much,
Mhm.
and it's sickening to think. And I feel as if eventually humanity will be able to weed that out of its system, but I also think that we're still very far from that.
Mhm.
you know, because all it does is hinder us. It's all it does, and I've just come to accept it. And it is what it is. And as long as I can live my life happily and in the way I want to, the law is really just a hypothetical at the end of the day. All right, I mean, it might be on a piece of paper somewhere, but it's just an idea. That's all it is. It's just an idea, and you can have new ideas while still considering the old ideas. But and I think that again that goes back to I think the first podcast we did. That's what we want to do. We always want to progress. We always want to strive for more, and that's what we need to do in regards to drugs.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's things on a piece of paper, but they're not really hypotheticals because they have real consequences. Like if,
Oh
um,
yeah, I can't argue that without yeah. You're exactly right.
but
Uh,
yeah, I don't know. It's interesting that you talk about how it's like when you're first smoking weed, a lot of was or there was at least a portion or of your life where you were smoking weed, which you wanted to give like kind of the finger to the law and kind of be like, this is ridiculous. Why this
It
is
wasn't so much. I mean, it definitely was a choice. It wasn't so much that, but I guess there it was definitely like a parental thing with me where it was like I was being told like you can't do this, you shouldn't do this or this and that, and it was I just felt as if I knew like when I was being told, oh, you can't do this or you shouldn't do this, like you can't I knew eventually that that was coming from a good place.
Mhm.
I couldn't and would never argue that. But that, but it for me, it just I had things inside me that just overrode, the idea of oh I won't do this, and I did it. That's all it was, and um, I
Because I feel like okay, yes, parents can guide you, but they aren't infallible. I mean, they can be wrong about things.
well again, it's not necessarily. I don't think it's a matter of right and wrong. It's just a matter of like I said, it's just a matter of they're doing the best they can is all it is, and that's almost like it's the story of life when it comes to parent and child. It's a parent is just used to guiding and protecting, and they do it for over a decade, and it's ingrained in them. And at some point in time, this child is going to start to just grow into their being their own individual and making their own choices or just their what choice or fate, whatever. It's their path, and it's a tough thing for a parent let go in a way, and let their child, just kind of, they're just so used to protecting and guiding and raising that, and I don't think they ever do. I mean, I think they eventually come to grips with it once, the kid has moved out and, maybe starts a family of their own, or moves across the country or around the world, or then it's easy. But if they're under the same roof, they're always going to be exercising that protective guidance, and it can be a tough thing to navigate for sure at times. I mean, I don't have kids, but having been a kid, it's tough because I knew that stuff. Like I said, it was coming from a good place, but at the same time, I have my own gut instincts and intuition, and my own desires, and I want to explore them. Like I said, be it choice or just the idea that I was meant to do this stuff, whatever it may be. Uh, there's going to be some friction and dissonance and stuff, and between a child and their parental figures, um, which is what it is.
Yeah, no, I understand. I understand where you're coming from. I definitely recognize that. Okay, so maybe it wasn't necessarily okay. So it was just you kind of trying to
There was, like I said,
break.
with my use, it was just gut instinct and intuition. I mean, Dare kind of worked when I was, say, in like sixth grade. It was like, okay, I'm never gonna smoke weed. I'm never gonna do drugs. Uh, and then it was something when I was like 14, eighth grade. It was just like, if I'm able to find it, I know I'm gonna try it. I don't know what, and I couldn't tell you what it was that did it. I have no idea, but it was while watching some like concert or something. My friends were telling me that, like, oh, the way they do these graphics and stuff, they're mimicking uh what it's like to be tripping on whatever or high, and I was just like, oh well. It was more curiosity because, like, well, is that what it's really like? You know what I mean? Would I really be seeing all these colors in the way that they're in the way that I'm seeing it on this screen, or so it just kind of generated a curiosity. So by the time I was like 14, it was like, no, if I'm able to find it, I'm gonna try it. I just knew it. There was nothing. It's just it was just there, and that's kind of how I got into it. It was just, like I said, at one point it was definitely like, oh, I'm never gonna do drugs, because that was the dare mentality, which, I mean, I can't imagine people don't know what that is. But what is that? Drugs awareness resistance education.
I
Yeah.
guess so. Yeah, I guess.
Did you have dare in your school?
Yeah, we did have Dare,
Oh,
but
okay, yeah. So, but like I said, it didn't work on me because
I don't think it works anymore. Yeah, I don't think it's. I don't. Oh, is it still? Oh, I guess it's still a thing. I didn't know if it was.
yeah, I think it's still around.
Yeah, drug abuse resistance education. Yeah,
Oh, drug abuse resistance education. Or it wasn't awareness.
yeah.
I don't even know what the acronym stands for anymore.
The Gorilla
um,
song is good. Dare. That's a good Gorilla song. That came up when I looked up Dare when I typed it in. But anyway,
I gotta check. I gotta look into them more because
the Gorillas, yeah, they're fantastic. They really are fantastic.
yeah.
They're amazing. But anyway, yeah, no, I totally understand where you're coming from and everything. I feel like I kind of went through the same thing where I really felt like, oh, I'm not gonna do drugs. I'm not gonna do drugs until I hit like high school. I think I might have been like 16 when I smoked weed for the first time, and I realized that, like, oh, this isn't some terrible thing, this
Right.
isn't like a horrible drug. And then I didn't for a while. I mean, I did like occasionally here and there, but it didn't become like a regular, I feel like a regular I feel like I use it very like for like medicinal
Right.
uses
Right.
instead of before just be like in high school and oh, it's like let's just get stoned and make a fire and like
Oh, of
yeah,
course, it's purely like recreational at that point.
yeah. But this is I feel like something that's really beneficial about weed and something that I really appreciate is that it kind of, for me anyway, that I found as now that I'm older, um, is that it really takes away this layer of yourself. At least for me, I was talking to my buddy about this, and he doesn't really have this experience, but it peels this layer, and it really forces me to look at things that I am really scared about that I wouldn't normally focus on. And people may think that that's a terrifying thing, but I think that that's a
Huh, that's very
it's
interesting, actually.
yeah, the way that I think about it, it's almost like when I'm stoned or whatever, it's like I'll know that when I'm not, I'm like, okay, I can handle these things, but when I am, it's like I'm really anxious. But like it's almost like I can see them and witness these things in almost a separate uh almost like in a detached way that I can recognize them and
Just from a different
yeah,
perspective.
yeah, exactly. And then kind of figure it out. And people may be like, "Oh man, that must be terrifying," but it really isn't. It's really I really appreciate that aspect because it pulls away any kind of mask or any kind of any kind of like mental gymnastics that I try to do to protect myself from like having to look at some ugly sides of myself or things that I've done, and it just rips that all apart, and I'm like forced to see things, and then I'm forced to work through things. And I think that that's I don't know. I feel like that's a benefit for sure, and it's really helpful for
Yeah.
me.
No, definitely, and yeah, it does. It will kind of shift your perspective in a sense.
Hmm.
Um, because, well, I'll go back to the couple things that your comments struck up in my mind.
Hmm.
Like, I feel as if it helps with certain things like anxiety, depression. Like, my outlook on anxiety, depression is like anxiety, I feel like, is influenced by your mind just pressing forward almost to the point where it can't live in the future, but it's so overly anticipating what's to come.
Hmm.
I feel that state of mind is what induces an anxiousness within anyone, because I think everybody is subject to experience it. It's just a question of how much and to what degree. Um, and whereas depression is more so based on the past, where your mind is lagging behind
Hmm.
and living in and it's just a matter of not being like totally present. And I mean that's kind of like the goal. I feel like that's the goal of meditation and the highest levels of consciousness. They say is just being in that present moment and understanding that the past is behind you. And it's crazy to think because you could break stuff down to milliseconds and
Hmm.
it's like, well, geez, what do I have to like restart every millisecond, or yeah, how do you do it? And I think it's just something you learn over the years, and just through you have to go through life to, and if you care to learn how to do it, I mean, some people just blaze through life. I mean, the people like that amaze me, who just kind of, it just seems like they're just barrel rolling through life, like just
Yeah.
not even considering or thinking. They just do it, and if things go well, great. If they go poorly, whatever, just keep, But anyway, so I feel like smoking helps to kind of. It does. It changes your perspective in the sense that I feel like it can alleviate anxiousness. It can also induce it too.
Yeah, I've
That
been induced into anxiousness for sure,
Yeah. I
but
mean, and
yeah.
I've had the experience of where it does. Well, they say one of the side effects, one of the some of the propaganda is the paranoia. They call it,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, and it can fuel that for sure. I'm not going to say it doesn't, but
And I think that's society. I'm not gonna lie. I think that like when it's illegal and I feel like a lot of the paranoia is like, oh, this is supposed to be bad. And I think if it was fully legal and you didn't have anything to worry about, there wouldn't be any paranoia. There really wouldn't. I think.
that's a great point. That's a great point, and but even when it comes to, because I mean, at this point, I've been doing it for so long. The idea of the quote unquote consequences, it's like, well, I'm not out in public. I'm not taking the fact that I'm doing it and ramming it down anybody's throat. You know what I mean? That so I don't really have those worries with it. Uh, but there have been, and it's very minimal considering how many times I've done it. I could maybe count on one hand. It might go on to the second hand, but how many times where it really not when it comes to, oh, am I going to get caught, but just where it did kind of accelerate an anxious kind of state of mind, as opposed to calm it down. And that's just because of where I was at in my life and what I was going through. And I was trying to use, marijuana in a way where I just maybe had exhausted that avenue or exhausted that tool, and I shouldn't have been using that. I should have been doing other things to deal with whatever situation it was I was going through. So, I'm not going to deny it and say, but it, like when I think about how much I've done it and how many times it's had that negative effect, it's such a small percentage of the time. So yeah, okay. To go back, I keep rambling, but to go back to it, yeah, I think it changes your perspective and it kind of brings you out of it. Yeah, it changes your perspective. It brings you out of the state that your mind is currently in, and that you wouldn't be able to shake it from without introducing, some sort of mind altering component. It's the same with alcohol, I mean, and that's legal, and we've all seen it. People loosen up when they have a drink. They loosen up more if they have 2 drinks. They loosen up further when they have 3, so on and so forth. I mean, we know how that works. But alcohol is a completely different beast, though.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not really
like. I'm sorry, I don't get, like, any times that I've been drunk, I definitely get friendlier, but I definitely don't get like introspective, and I don't feel like I am.
No.
I'm not improving myself. No. That's for sure. I'll tell you that.
No.
Like that's not something that alcohol.
No.
Does. Yeah.
No. I mean, you might pour your heart out, but it's not. No, you don't get introspective at all with alcohol, not whatsoever. I don't. I'm not really a huge. I mean, I'm not against it. I don't partake to a large extent at all. It's enjoyable to have a drink here and there, and I do enjoy like the taste too. I mean, that's something I've come to like about it. I love different craft beers, wines, whiskeys, whatever, but I don't know. I was way more interested in that introspection. Is that a word? Introspection? But that introspective experience that you get from weed, and then to further go with the whole of like it changes your perspective, it kind of can pull you out of an anxious state or a depressed state. I also I think like when it comes to hallucinogenics, a big thing that it does, I feel, is like at least for that point in time, but it can change your perspective drastically to the point where it almost segregates you from your ego, and you're able to look at yourself and your thoughts and your place in where you are, like in just amongst other people, this and that. You're able to look at yourself in a much more objective way, as opposed to a subjective way. You become very. It's almost like you're looking at yourself the way you would look at a stranger, and making the judgments and and you're able to analyze. Like, so if you're looking at another person and observing them, it's like your mind's doing this thing, and it's like, well, if you could ask yourself, how often do I do that to myself? And people, without using like before I had ever done that, it's like I never really did that. What type of person am I? How do I act? How do I speak to people? You don't really do that, and I feel like
I don't know. I do that a lot. I feel like I can be quite critical on myself, and actually, the idea of looking
Well,
at.
I'm the same way, but that's because we smoke a lot. you know,
But like, no. True. Probably a huge part of it is that. But I mean, I feel like even before I was smoking, I feel like I was very critical on myself. But something, because I've never done hallucinogens, but something that sounds really appealing to me. I'm definitely not opposed to it. If it was given to me, I'm sure that I would do it. But
again, it's the other thing. It's not I wouldn't force it upon anybody. Um, if you're not okay with
no,
it.
no. But the way that you're talking about it makes me think that it would be something that I would be interested in. But the point that I'm trying to make is that the idea of being able to look at yourself objectively, because I think that a huge portion, a huge issue that I have, and I think that many people face this, is that I can look at myself in a really negative light, but I can look at everybody else in a really positive light. So if I was able to separate myself from that and look at myself as I would a stranger or a friend or a family member, or in an objective way, because the way that I look at myself is totally subjective. I mean, I struggle with depression, and I go through periods of deep self-hatred, but then someone else will be like, no, you're such a great, not to humble brag here or toot my own horn, but like, someone's like,
No, complete no, and it's a big thing I've gone through. I'll let you finish your point though. Go ahead.
well, yeah, I mean, that's just kind of what I was gonna say. That, like, whereas other people are like, no, like, you're fine. I'll be like, no, I like hurt you like this or whatever, and they're like, no. Most times people don't even remember something that I'm upset about, that I thought to them, or that, like, oh, I think that they're looking at me in this way because of what I did, and like normally I'm completely wrong. So that sounds like a really healthy um, way to kind of change your perspective on yourself. Like, that sounds like that would be something healing and helpful to you, because I feel that being able,
Well, when you say you mean like to anybody,
yeah,
just helpful to a
yeah,
person,
it's helpful to a person, yeah, for sure.
right? Yes. No,
The
I feel
general
like it's a
use, yeah.
fantastic. Um, and again, without ever using it, you never really. It's like you never find. It's like you've been beating nails in with a rock, your whole life, and then once you try something like marijuana, it's like you find a hammer for the first time. So that's not to say that, like, oh, you should walk around swinging a hammer all the time. You shouldn't walk around smoking weed all the time, but it's good to have that in the toolbox for if and when you need it. That's kind of how I feel about it. But yeah, I feel like that's the ultimate. I feel like that's kind of the best thing that you can extract from using drugs like that, is that objective outlook on yourself, because it's hard to do that. It's hard to look at yourself in the mirror, metaphorically, figuratively. It's difficult if you don't have. It's tough because it can be a lot of There's a lot of stuff, when it comes to stuff that you might need to improve upon or just enhance about yourself. There's going to be a point in time where you feel some ill feelings, be it guilt or just like you said, self-hatred. Is like, oh, there's this downside to me, if you will, and it's a lot of people don't want to face that, but that's only temporary. Once you've identified it and you can start to think about it and work on it, then you're only moving in a better direction, because you're evolving yourself. So that moment of, oh man, I've made this mistake, or this isn't a great trait of mine. That's just temporary.
Hmm.
You move forward then, and it's something, uh, it's just we can get hung up in the past, and again, that's why, like, that goal, like I was saying, of like Buddhists, and it's just be present, because
Hmm.
it's amazing what people will hold on to from the past. And on the flip side of the coin, it's also amazing how much stuff people will anticipate that hasn't happened yet and may not ever happen. And that's why I feel like just a good balanced place to be is just, in that present moment. And yeah, I think it's but to go back to, yeah, I mean, I think drugs can help with that. They're not the end all say all, but I feel like it's a good little tool to find along your way in life and use it here and there to, navigate yourself and just your where you are in life and your place in life and all that stuff.
Mm.
But yeah, I feel like that's
Yeah.
probably the best result of using them is that objective outlook on yourself.
Mm, mm. Yeah, yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I think that that's yeah, I think that that's kind of like the purposes of them here because
Yeah,
they
yeah, I agree completely. They're here for a reason, you know.
yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say. It's like, especially if you're coming from this idea that God created this world and everything's meant to kind of be used, and he created everything to as something. I guess yeah, I just feel like things have been created. It's here for us to use and experience, and these natural sources have components that affect us in these certain ways, and it's like I feel like the more that you fight it, just the worse off that it is. You know what I mean? It's almost like you're fighting against something that's natural. It's like we have evolved in this world. We are designed to be in this world, and therefore we're supposed to be using these things. It's part of the human or it should be part of the human experience. And I feel that just by demonizing them, you create this
And ultimately, like
kind of
if we really pull the lens out or adjust it to where we're looking at humanity in a broad sense, or in a broad scape in the sense of time, like I do feel as if I think we are entering where these natural chemical compounds, which come through plants. DMT is the other one that we could spend a little time. I don't have any experience with it, but it's these naturally occurring, chemical compounds in plants, which they're there. And but going back to like what you said, it's one of the little mantras that you hear in life is, "Oh, everything happens for a reason." And I personally, I mean, I've met people who, for whatever reason, I don't even know the reasons, but they're like, "Oh, I don't really like this saying or whatever you want, or mantra, whatever you want to call it." I personally like it because it's really it helps with the whole good and bad thing, and it diminishes. And now some people will say, like, well, why would you want to diminish positivity and goodness? Well, because I feel like it's on a scale, and if I try to over embrace this positive, like ecstatic state of mind, you're bound. I feel like the universe is always just balancing itself out. So if you push yourself to this, what you think is this positive direction, the universe is ultimately going to push you equally the other way. That's why, with, I mean, anything, if you just not, away aside from drugs, like if you're just having a great time at some party or whatever, barbecue, or and you're dancing or you're doing whatever. I mean, and you within the moment, it's like, oh, this is great. Why can't life be like this all the time, feeling great? Eventually, you come down from it. You're exhausted. You're tired, and
yeah.
that's just it's nature. It's the universe. It's always balancing. So, oh shit, where was I going with this? Oh, the whole good and bad. Like everything happens for a reason. So, and that helps with the whole good and bad thing because it helps to look at things as again objectively, because let's not look at it as good and bad. Let's look at it as, okay, it just happened. And if everything happens for a reason, there's got to be there has to be an answer as to why that happened. And sometimes you can probe and figure it out, and sometimes you're just not meant to know. But but I think my point was, I think we're at a point in time where, even with, say, like pharmaceuticals like this, like OxyContin and stuff like that, which is terrible. I mean, I think, well, we know now it's an epidemic, as I mean, the president's talking about it at this point. We all know it's a nationwide epidemic of these opiate, derived, pills, and
Hmm.
I feel as if when they were first developed, it was like, oh, this kind of helps with pain, or this helps, and it was like, oh, they're good, and now it's gotten to the point where it's just done so much damage, way more damage, I feel like, than it has done any good. And I feel like even with natural drugs, like these natural drugs, it I think they will have their time, if you will, like along the history of mankind, to where they're going to be as accessible as the pills were. They're going to be, especially if they're legal and whatnot. But I feel like the abuse of a naturally occurring chemical compound, the abuse of it will never be as extreme. Even though, I mean, opiates, they technically are derived from, like the poppy. I could be wrong. I'm not a chemist, though. I can't really say, but I think there's going to be a point in time where the chemical, be it THC. Cause, I mean, even they even say it, like the weed these days is just so much more potent than what there was, 50 years ago, or 60 years ago, almost 60. Back in the 60s, it's almost two completely different things. So there may come a point in time where the abuse of, be it THC or something like DMT, or because LSD, that's like that's a lab,
Well, it was
created.
it was the first a fungus that grew on wheat that then
Oh,
they used. Yeah,
oh, really?
yeah,
Oh,
LSD. What?
you know more than I do, apparently.
Yeah, no, LSD was originally with some. I'm gonna look that up. The fungus, but it was um
So it's like a mold or something.
it was a fungus. Yeah, it's definitely fungus. Ergot of rye is produced by the lower fungus that grows parasitically on rye.
Interesting.
Fungi of the genus did a ergot does not contain, but instead contains lysergic acid as well as its precursor. Um, anyway, yeah, so it comes from this fungus that grows, but yes, they add some stuff to it, to the alkaloids. Anyway,
Right, but I mean,
sorry.
I really, like I said, I think I mentioned it earlier. No, I got you. I mentioned it earlier, though. I do feel like eventually, like, this stuff is going to be abused. Weed's going to be abused. And it's going to be made even more potent, and it's going to be abused. It's going to cause many problems. And the way, not to say that, oh, I've found the way. I'm not the first, and I'm not going to be the last. Of where I think people are going to realize that ultimately the goal will be to explore, because they say, when it comes to the brain, I don't know the actual numbers, but we use what, like 10% of our brain when it comes to I don't even know what it is. The amount of neurons that could fire off, we only actually fire off this many, or um, and neurology, they say it like they know nothing about the brain. There's so much going on that I feel like we're the step we are in mankind. If we last for thousands of years, I feel like we're just this little snapshot in time where, with the use of drugs, not like the opiate derived stuff, but like with, say, stuff like weed or hallucinogens, whatnot. I feel like we're just starting to open the gates to just further using our minds and our brains, and just kind of bumping up the frequency, and just operating on a higher vibration. And eventually, I think we might enter a time where we don't use drugs. It's like, okay, we've already gotten past this phase. Now we're going to explore meditation and things like that, and lining up with maybe different aspects of the solar system or the galaxy. Becoming way more aware of where we are in the grand scheme of things, and actually somehow maybe getting in touch and tapping into stuff like that, and not just tapping into it, but like actually being able to feel, just feel that stuff and sense that stuff that like these days we would deem just so far away or just so minuscule when it comes to the effect it has on us. It's like, well, no, our senses, we know it's been scientifically proven, they're so limited. I feel like, you know, maybe the use of drugs like these might expand our minds to the point where we are able to start to perceive more than we do now. And like I said, the day may come where we realize that, okay, these drugs are actually just hindering us now, and we're better off just having this kind of sober, approach to mind exploration, if you will. I kind of feel that way. But I also feel that we are also at a point in time where those, like the natural occurring drugs, they haven't been given their chance. They haven't been given their time. The way say like alcohol has been given its, they tried to ban, alcohol and prohibition, and it just didn't work. And, so they legalize it, and it's like, whatever, have at it. And I feel like, the mind altering drugs like, like weed or, just mushrooms or whatever it is, they haven't really had their time to shine, if you will. There's been no billboards for mushrooms or there's been no billboards for plants.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, maybe I don't know, maybe out in Colorado or some of the states where it's legal. I don't know if they have billboards out there for anything, but
yeah, I think they do have some signs
potentially. But let me just quickly say, I think the 10% that you only use 10% of your brain, I'm pretty sure that's a myth. And I was looking it up.
It could be.
Yeah, I think 10% that you only use 10%. It's a myth, but I do think there's a lot of untapped potential that your brain has that we're not using, that you're not utilizing for sure. I think the number 10%. I don't know where that came from, but I don't think it's accurate.
No, I don't think it's accurate, and I mean, granted, I'm not a neurologist. I know nothing, but maybe if neurons fire off, because there's electricity running through us and stuff, and the neurons, it fires off in the brain. But maybe the goal is to change the sequence in which they fire off,
Yeah.
So I'm not, you're not looking to change out anything, but it's like, I don't know. I can't really think of an analogy right now, but I feel like with drugs like, marijuana or mushrooms or something like LSD or DMT, I feel like it gives you an experience with the universe, and through a lens or a perspective that you just never had before, and then it just gives you something to kind of strive for, and you can maybe train. I don't know. Now I'm just kind of rambling, but just train that, the thought process of yourself to think just differently, and maybe in a more enhanced and efficient way, and in a more connected way too. And maybe, I don't know, maybe that's just my experience and my goal. Who knows?
Yeah, definitely.
But,
I want to just go back to where you were saying that like plants haven't really had their heyday. We haven't had an opportunity to really explore what they have to offer and then utilize it, and then kind of.
Other than tobacco, of course.
That's true. That's a very good point. Yeah, true. Nicotine is definitely, yeah.
Yeah, tobacco's had its yeah, it's time to shine,
Yeah, and
but
then we moved away from it. We kind of saw that it wasn't that good.
exactly, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like I said, I do feel like eventually we will move away, but yeah, yeah, definitely.
But yeah, because it's interesting because a lot of these drugs where, and this is a lot, this is being done a lot in in Europe, where they're doing a lot of experiments with microdosing LSD and psilocybin, and they're realizing that it can be have great benefits for people with mental illnesses, and like so they are discovering things when it's when they're able to do research.
NYU, I heard recently that NYU did a study with mushrooms with psilocybin and depression, and I don't know. All I know is that they did a study, and I mean, and that the findings were very just along the lines of this really can help a lot of people. I
That's
mean,
what I'm saying. Yeah, it can do a lot of great things, and we are just kind of we're just kind of I don't know everybody's just or I shouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people are just holding it back, and I don't understand, uh but yeah, I think a lot of these natural drugs, even especially some of the more intense ones like peyote and ayahuasca, for just to name two, and though even those, I feel like those have incredible benefits, and I don't know, and we're not discovering what those benefits could be, but I think that a lot of ancient people, I think that they knew how beneficial they could be. Yeah, without a doubt, I feel like, especially when you get into certain trips like ayahuasca, where they experience almost the same kind of symbols and themes. People are experiencing the same thing. I mean, the evidence is very strong to have them having these objects, these substances, these plants be a really integral like component of a spiritual awakening. That I think is something that that should be explored, and I think that people should have the right to explore those things. And I personally feel like all drugs should be decriminalized and legalized, in my opinion. That's a pretty strong. I know that that's a lot of people may disagree with that, but you should have the choice to experience reality in a way that you want to experience it. Uh, and I think that or at least go on a spiritual journey that you want to go on. But experiencing reality sounds like you're constantly using the drugs, and obviously we talked about like you should not be just constantly using them. You have to use them um, in quantities that are wise for you to use and not detrimental to you. But I feel like if they're used in a respectful manner, they should totally be legal, and people should have the right to use them however they see fit. Um, that's just what that's what I mean that's how I kind of feel, or that's the kind of stance I take, and I yeah. No, I was just gonna ask because I had this thought that I feel like something that you said way back where you were like, oh yeah, when I smoked, I was kind of like, all right, this is like kind of my speed, this is kind of my vibe and everything. Do you think that there are certain plants out there that interact with people in a certain way that will be incredibly beneficial for that specific person? Where it's like maybe not everybody should be doing peyote, maybe not everybody should be doing ayahuasca or smoking or mushrooms or
well, I mean, no, and actually, I think I'm thinking back. I think what I said in regards to weed is that like I don't need that speed any more than I already have. You know what I mean? I think that was the point I was making. But you like, I think with the whole microdosing thing, that's that's where that's the thing with like drugs is that it's like because we just said it's like, oh well, we should have the choice, and a lot of people, everybody's different. So I think the amount that people need actually, the amount that people need might be the same, but the amount that people want is going to be different. There's some people out there who just they want more and more and more, and that's just how they're wired, and they want to keep going, keep going. They don't really. That's where it kind of gets shifty, and maybe we'll come to a point in time where humans just not. I don't want to say. I don't want to say in like a socialist sense of like, well, we're all gonna use the same, but I feel, but maybe we'll get to a point where we all used and and consume the same, but due to us wanting that and agreeing that okay, this is all we need, and okay, this is our optimal amount of this, that we should have in our lives. Um, but I don't know. Talking about the microdosing and stuff, and it makes me think of I feel like just these drugs, like you said. I feel like they make you just a little bit more aware. It gives you again a different perspective, and like I said, it kind of just shows you this new angle on like your relationship to just existing in the universe and everything. That's kind of how I feel, and um, it makes me think of Avatar. You ever see that movie? Like, and you know how they have like they call it the Awa, I believe. It's like they're that it's almost like they're God in a sense. I could be wrong. Maybe James Cameron didn't intend it this way, but it was like their God. It was like that. It was like that fluid energy or like kind of force thing that was in everything, and it rooted in that tree that they were, and obviously the movie was just a giant analogy. I feel like for uh, the capitalist approach to profit, because and which I mean, this is just well, whatever. But to get back to the point, um, and the what were the people named? The Navi, that was their name. They were so in tune. Well, and I only know this because I kind of pulled up something on my phone so I could, have the words to use. So, if people want to go watch it, it's a long ass movie. Uh, but they had this like just connectedness and this awareness of this energy that was flowing through everything. The trees and the animals and um, yeah, there was still big animals out there that they knew they should run from, and that they couldn't defeat. They knew other giant stuff, animals, whatever, that were peaceful and just harmless when it came to them. They were just aware of that interconnecting energy between themselves, their fellow species, and then just everything around them. And it kind of goes to, I think we talked about in the first conversation we had about the experiment I saw in that documentary with the yogurt. And it like that kind of, when I saw that, and I almost linked the two, like that yogurt experiment, and with the idea of how the um, the Navi people in the movie Avatar like view their world, like only they're in that movie and in Avatar they're so much more aware of it, and when they did start cutting down that tree of theirs and slaying the people, I mean, it was just so crushing, and because it was almost like, and again, it's kind of like a very accurate analogy, I feel like, of what's going on right before our eyes, today, of just I feel like we approach life and the consumption of things in such an off way, and I look forward to the fact of, and I do believe we are, refining that approach that we take towards consuming things. I believe it. I would like to think it, but to where we just use things for how they're intended to be used, to the extent they're intended to be used, and really nothing more than that. and I think we just reach a much more balanced state, which I don't know. Like I said, some people might argue, oh, that's such a boring idea, but I don't know. I'd like to think that that's where we're headed, and it's it's almost it almost induces the idea of like a utopia, or like the idea of just peace, and having just an everlasting, all-encompassing sense of peace amongst everybody and everything like around us, because I don't feel, I'm starting to think, with that stuff that, people are no more significant or better than an ant or, a leaf or whatever it is, but at the same time, everything has its use and purpose. And, yeah, so to go back to it, I feel like drugs can just kind of maybe ramp up the the frequency that your brain is working on, or just open some new doorways and expand your consciousness to where you can kind of consider more than you just weren't able to consider prior to using them. Yeah, that's kind of that should be the goal of them. And through just you talking about the microdosing and everything, like for me, it's like I've had some kind of I don't want to say heavy experiences, but it was just because of the dosage amount. It was like, I wouldn't say I took too much, but I took stuff to where it's like, oh, it lasted a long time, or it was just like you're for a certain amount of time you're just kind of useless because you're just so enveloped in this experience. Whereas if you were just to cut it down, you could have over a bigger length of time of taking just small amounts, the same effects, kind of,